like to talk about the change curve. Now, the change curve, for those of you that may not have come across this concept before, was a theory that was proposed by a psychiatrist, a Swiss psychiatrist called Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Kubler-Ross, she was doing studies of bereavement, and this is, I believe, early 50s, maybe early 60s. But in her studies, she was looking at the emotional curve that people go through when there's a big change in life, particularly driven by bereavement. Now, bear in mind, this was not long after the war, so a lot of people were experiencing loss and that sense of emotions that come with it. The concept of the change curve, whilst it was looking at bereavement, has actually translated into wider parts of society, and particularly into business. And you can manage when a big change, or big or small change, comes into the workplace. It has an impact on morale, energy, and performance. And the emotions people go through can take time, and obviously that can impact on the success of a business. So the trick is, how do you move people through that timeline as quickly as possible? But the emotions that people go through were seen as unavoidable. When there is first a change, there is instantaneously a period of shock, and then following shock, there's denial. Following denial, it proceeds into an area of anger and blame and frustration. Why are you doing this? This isn't right. And then into a bargaining. Well, how's that going to work there? And it's initially, it's probably quite angry bargaining. Well, that's never going to work. How's that going to work? And ultimately morphs into, "Oh, I'm not sure about this. I really can't face the future," depression type mode, before going more into a period of acceptance and bargaining of less. Well, how's that going to work? Into a, well, how's that going to work? And that acceptance and starting to embrace. And then finally into an area where the change has been accepted as the future. And now we're into that exploration, problem solving, embracing that change and what it means. Now, there are various models which show far more periods of emotion, but I've taken this one as a typical model that is out there to show that curve people go through. Now, as people move through the curve, they move through at different speeds, and there are a couple of notable points on the curve. The first is an unexpected spike in performance following the initial shock. Now, I have a theory on this. I think people revert to ultra normal, ultra efficient upon hearing the news, almost as a response mechanism. So you don't need to do this. Look how great it all is already as it is. But that doesn't last long before people move into the next stages of denial. So that initial spike in performance may look good, but it's not one that gets sustained. And that at the end of the curve, you'll notice that if it's good, well managed, changed, the result will be higher productivity than before, proving that the change has all been worthwhile. Now, people will move back and forth through the various stages of emotions. Potentially, they won't necessarily be linear and on to the next stage. Some people will go forward a few paces, then back a few paces, then forward again, back a bit, forward a bit. Some people will even be stuck on a point on the curve and they just cannot move forward, and some people will fall off the curve completely. It's not for me, and they remove themselves from the process. How can we move people through quicker? Well, some of the pieces is answering questions and giving clarity, even if you can't give certainty. So communicating a vision, what will increase as a result? What will be better as a result of this change? What improvements will it bring? What will decrease as a result? What do we stop doing? What might we miss, but we're no longer going to be doing it? What needs to be maintained? What are the constants? What are the compliance pieces we can't change and vary from? What do we need to do that's different, that's new? What do we need to create that we haven't done before, or adapt in our current processes and approaches? What will the change enable the company or us as a team to do? And probably the biggest question to answer is, what will happen to me as a result of the change? Am I going to have a job? If I have got a job, is the job the same as what I've got at the moment? Is my role going to be very different? Am I going to need a new skill set? I'm talking big examples. It's not always extreme, as there's going to be job losses. Change happens, is a constant of modern life. But what will happen to me is going to be the root of the individual as thought processes, even if they're thinking about the other things as well. So trying our best to answer those questions will help people move through those emotional curves quicker than if those questions remain unanswered. So clarity will help the speed in which people move through the unavoidable emotions, and some people may go back and forth within the emotions. One final point I will add is if you have been involved in the decision making and the bringing the idea of the change to the table, then don't forget you're already ahead of the emotional roller coaster you're going through. So you've already started to move through the emotions. You've had a chance to process what the change means. Your team haven't, so don't expect them to be instantly up to where your view of it is when you're asking for that change to come into being.